I've been playing a ton of games lately, and for the most part, I knew what I was getting myself into in those cases. But in between Like a Dragon Ishin, Final Fantasy 16, Tears of the Kingdom, Octopath Traveler 2, etc., etc., there was one game that caught my attention in ways I didn't expect. And that game was called Wanted Dead, which was from a newer publisher over in Switzerland called 110 Industries, but it was the brain baby of a developer called Soleil, which had developed games ranging from Naruto to Boruto Shinobi Striker and Valkyrie Elysium all the way down to Ninjala on the Switch and Samurai Jack Battle Through Time, which was apparently a game they didn't even bother proofreading before adding it to their site credits. But what's of note to me in regards to today's subject is that as of 2021, they had absorbed the now defunct developer Valhalla Games, which was led by none other than Tomonobu Itagaki, who I had touched on previously in my Ninja Gaiden 3 review. You can watch that video later for added context as to why I think that's a funny revelation, but at the time of recording, I have to note that Itagaki-san is no longer with the company after the merger, and he's since founded yet another developer called Apex Games, which is, at the time of recording, being said to be working on an NFT game called Warrior. And boy, can I wait to never bring that up again, no matter how late Itagaki is going to be to that party. I don't care if it ever comes out. But what game did he and Valhalla make when they were still a thing? Why, none other than Devil's Third, the most popularly bad game on Nintendo's least popular console, the Wii U. So this is just all shaping up beautifully, but rewind to before I looked into all of this. I just remember randomly hearing about this game last summer, and I was honestly intrigued. The marketing was bragging about it being developed by the original Ninja Gaiden devs, in this case one Hiroaki Matsui, who worked on Ninja Gaiden Black, and Ninja Gaiden 2. And the game consists of a mix of gunplay and swordplay, a number of cutscenes animated in a retro anime style, with a soundtrack chock full of 80s hits. They're covers though, we are on a budget here. And they even had this admittedly smart trailer called the Valentine's Day trailer, which featured a character by the name of, you guessed it, Valentine. Even though the trailer isn't really about her, but they dropped another trailer in the form of an anime music video that really focused on Valentine's Day in the world of the game. And also it was a double entendre because the game was dropping on Valentine's Day 2023. Aside from how those trailers were trying to distract you from how they weren't really saying anything directly towards the game as a whole, this was all starting to sound interesting. So why is it that, for better or worse, I heard an almost stunning level of silence about this game? Well, that sounds about right. So because I've been enjoying myself too much lately, I feel as though I need to balance that out by experiencing this game that I am already sure is going to be some kind of beautiful mess. If you're brave, join me today as I review Wanted Dead on the PlayStation 5. And yes, I bought the collector's edition because I almost never feel buyer's remorse, but I just might this time.
Hey, yo, Giant, let's go!
In Wanted Dead, we find ourselves in the nondescript jail cell of Hannah Stone, an apparent war criminal that we join just in time to watch her accept an offer that forgives her jail sentence. Fast forward some time later and we see that the offer was to lead a police squad in Cyberpunk China. They're called the Zombie Squad, and I'm not sure what their purpose is for, except being to make sure everyone hates them because nobody on the force has a high opinion of them due to the fact that they're known to cause extreme amounts of property damage whenever they show up. The team consists of Hannah, their medic actually called Doc, who seems to be generally tired of everyone's shit, Cortez, who is unique in that I find him the only unlikable member of this team, and it both is and isn't because he's deaf. He spends his screen time signing straightforward statements about whatever current situation they're in, and that paired with him not speaking lends to him being 100% liable to not say something that will annoy me. And lastly, we have this greaseball Herzog, who apparently became a soldier only because he liked seeing women in uniform and spends all his time being a smarmy douchebag while constantly talking about weapons, women, or food in no particular order. I also find it pretty stupid that he has such a prominently German name with such a prominently non-German accent.
He's just following her like a dog. He doesn't speak and he never makes eye contact.
Ugh, yuck. You know what? What the hell does Herzog mean anyway? Duke? Is this guy supposed to be a reference to Duke Nukem? Oh man, thanks, I hate it. An entire police squad composed of war criminals who aren't even remotely likable, and this is the most egregious thing that I picked up on. Anywho, before I get lost out of the gate, the story picks up with Hannah living in Hong Kong working with the police when a situation breaks out at some place called DaArTimari, I think? I don't remember because I was too busy gunning through waves of brain dead enemies, and even that kind of escaped my memory when... Oh no. It's Ninja Gaiden 3 all over again. After taking it out, you're ambushed by a group of soldiers led by some guy named Richter, who is just so obviously evil, from the mustache to the veiny forehead to the way he talks, clearly not giving a shit about how he looks like this meme. But he doesn't get a chance to make things worse before great value Danny Glover, aka the police captain, arrives to break it up. The team notes that the people causing the ruckus here were trying to steal money, despite it not being a currency used on this side of the world. As Hannah points that out, wondering why the thieves were after this money, Doc cuts in just to say,
Boys in blue will lock everything up when we get with this room.
Thanks, Doc. That absolutely didn't answer anything. And also, you're the police. You're the boys in blue. Just because you're wearing a long sleeve and a vest doesn't make you special. What are you talking about right now? Back at the station, Hannah is greeted by a lady called Madam Wong, who I think is flirting with her. And that goes absolutely nowhere, by the way. She doesn't do anything but hang around in the station for the rest of the game. I just feel like pointing out all the useless characters and interactions as I see them. But after getting chewed out by the captain for turning the Dower building into landfill, Hannah runs into another character who was apparently just called Gunsmith. I bet you $5 you can't guess what she does. And her cat, who gets this weird zoom in that just screams, "Yeah, look how we rendered this cat. You like that, don't you?" And then Hannah proceeds to go take a shower in the locker room. And the whole time I was watching this scene, I just kept thinking, Hannah wants to be John Wick so bad. Also, am I the only one that noticed Hannah's hair is still in a ponytail during the shower, but then we see her fixing her hair wrap to make a ponytail after the fact? I don't think that's sanitary, but I digress. Hannah struggles to eat potatoes and hot dogs at the cafeteria before taking a stroll around the station and reminiscing about a case she once took where she found a dead lady, had to kill the boyfriend that murdered her in self-defense, and sat with their kid who was entirely too chill about what just happened, considering he heard everything up to that point. And then it cuts right back to current day, so I feel like that was meant to be some kind of character building moment for Hannah, showing that she regrets her actions sometimes, but it's never really explored. This flashback definitely doesn't ever come back to bear any significance to the current events, mind you. And then Hannah gets all dizzy and has visions of her self-insert fanfic of cyberpunk edgerunners for a solid minute before she snaps back to reality thanks to Herzog. It must have been the cafeteria food, so Hannah goes with Gunsmith, whose actual name is apparently Vivian, by the way, so why don't they just say that? And Herzog joins in to ruin the vibe while challenging Hannah to an eat-off. And yes, they actually programmed a minigame where you eat ramen. This game is legitimately giving me whiplash the way the tone shifts every 20 seconds. And as another example of that, the very next scene features Stone and Doc examining a dead body that's unidentifiable, an apparent oddity because everything in China is monitored to high hell, and no, that is not me talking, that's the game. Somehow we got from blowing up buildings and waxing philosophical over ramen to commentary on state surveillance. This game is ridiculous. Later, the squad is getting their gear checked when they're informed both of Dower Synthetics going bankrupt and of a riot being caused by synthetics taking place, so they're called to put a stop to it. And as you expect, it all goes to hell and the local park turns into a war zone where Zombie Squad tears through synthetics without a single care before Hannah ends up separated from the squad and in a boss fight with a synthetic named August. Hannah gets the upper hand, so August tries to escape with another synthetic when he takes a shot from Herzog and drops the girl synthetic. In the aftermath, the captain shows up and starts marveling at how much the synthetics look like real people, which just adds to my irritation because right before we showed up, he was the one going,
Stone, give them hell. They might look human. They might act human. They're not. Open fire.
I'm not in the mood for you showing up and getting all weird about it, man. Hannah and Herzog say that they think with everything happening lately that there's some kind of player pushing for control. And sure, maybe you're onto something with 3 out of 4 of those things, but you think the John Doe is tied to all this too? Now you're just talking. Stop it. Doc takes the woman synthetic and damn dude, relax. I'm annoyed too, but you don't gotta do all that. We go to the station yet again and get chewed out by the captain yet again before the squad go out to eat and start waffling about nothing again before we do karaoke. This game wants to be Yakuza so bad. Once again at the station, Hannah interrogates the synthetic named October in a scene that feels somewhere in between Basic Instinct and Detroit Become Human. And trust me, this scene is as dumb as that comparison sounds. But from talking to her, they start to draw this conclusion that maybe she's not all synthetic. Another shower, another dumb minigame, and another anime flashback of edgier Hannah struggling to pay for tuberculosis medication. The gang pulls up some old footage of Hannah interrogating a random guy named Mustafa Mercer, who is a submarine smuggler, and I don't think the writer's knew how morbidly funny that randomly unnecessary tidbit would be now when they wrote it. But during this video, Mustafa says something eerily similar to what October said during Hannah's chat with her, so never you mind the sheer asspull that was this tape and that one line. They decide good old Mustafa must have some info for them, so Hannah and Cortez head out. They pull up to some random club where Hannah, in the middle of pointing a gun at a bunch of strangers, starts to have yet another vague-ass flashback to her meeting some guy in a club, before coming back again thanks to Cortez and confronting Mustafa. And I'm gonna be honest, everything that happens here is a waste of my time and yours, because Mustafa tries to play coy when he sees a pic of October before almost immediately going, "I took the money, man, I ain't have a choice." And before I could even rub two brain cells together and figure out what this dude's babbling about, Doc hits up Hannah's radio and says that they ran tests and found out that October is 100% human. So while I'm sitting here thinking, how does that work? Is it a General Grievous situation? Or is it more 2014 RoboCop? Mustafa pulls a gun and Cortez reacts by putting a bullet in his head, and the whole thing becomes a store-brand John Wick shootout in a club. We make it out, but not before Cortez gets shot in the arm and Hannah has to fight off this girl who looks like Budget Ava from Borderlands 3. Hannah wins and takes off with Cortez before, surprise, Richter and his goons from the beginning show up just as they're leaving, showing us that Richter's in on whatever this is and reinforcing to us that we're gonna have to fight this guy later. We get back to the station where Doc is acting like this is a military movie where he has to perform emergency surgery to save Cortez's life. But I'm sorry, we all saw the same thing, right? He got shot in the arm. I know he's in pain, but that man's life is not in danger. Calm down, overacting ass. Anywho, the squad, Vivian, and October all go on high alert and try to plan their next move, but a little while ago, Cap sent me a text to Hannah's burner phone telling her to leave. I assumed this was him telling her she was fired or something, but this plot is moving so haphazardly I forgot to mention that before they left to that club, the station got defunded, so they're all just here for the free space apparently. But then Richter's gang shows up and starts tearing the place apart, and you end up fighting through them to escape. Somewhere along the line after, I ran into Richter's right-hand man, great value Tom Cruise, and I know Richter thought it was a deal because now he's got two of them. But after killing them and pushing through more goons in the street, we got into contact with August, and he meets up with us as we're doing the Big Trouble in Little China thing. But is he gonna help us? No, he takes October, gives us a makeout scene that rivals Sonic 06.
God motherfucking damn.
And then he nods at us and just leaves, and on top of that, he leaves with my squad. Dude, don't do this to me. I had to fight like 12 crowds, 20 bullet sponge enemies, and 2 spider tanks at the same time to get here. Don't leave me. Take me with you, please. At the end of this far too long final level, we end up getting separated from the squad once again when Richter shows up dressed like a rejected Metal Gear Revengeance boss. And when we kill him, we get one final flashback scene with him where we see that Cap had one last meetup with Richter before all this happened, and they allude to there being something big involving Hannah that they both knew about, and they just never elaborate on this, and the scene ends with them trading shots before it fades to black. So the captain's last message was definitely a warning to leave the station before Richter silenced him, but before we can even process that, we cut straight to one last scene with Hannah calling some orphanage or whatever that she's been donating to speak to a kid right before more soldiers pull up for another fight. Naturally, if you were somehow keeping track of all this, you'd think that that was that kid from the flashback in the beginning, but then we get one last anime flashback where we learn that Hannah Stone's real name is Emma Lautner, and when she was 19, she signed up for experimental drug testing that would pay her the money she needed to take care of her then 4-year-old son because the father ran off after she got pregnant at 15. She reluctantly signs on as the scene trails off around the point where the doctor mentions that there may be side effects to this medicine. And I'm sorry, but this whole scene is being recorded in a way that gives off I mean, seriously, what the fuck does any of this mean? Was that her kid on the phone that she was crying about, or was it the orphan kid we knew about way before this? Why did she change her name? What happened after she hung up the phone when all those soldiers showed up? What is so important about Hannah that no one wants to talk about? Well, good luck with that, because the game says, oh, you wanted answers for all that right now? Oh, I'm sorry. We thought that this game was going to take off and we were getting a sequel. Oops. And then it rolls credits. What was the point? I'm sorry, but this story, this whole plot was laughably, and I mean hilariously stupid. Never mind it being a cheap homage to 80s flicks or however they tried to spin it, this story is garbage. And the crazy thing is, I want to be mad, but I'm having that moment where you're so confused that you just kind of have to laugh it off. And the crazy thing is, everything I mentioned, this entire train wreck of a story happened in 5 levels. 5! This game crammed all of these elements that went nowhere into a game that, should you be playing on an easier difficulty, takes roughly 4 hours to beat. But no, I played it on hard because I just do shit like that sometimes, so it took me almost 10 hours because the plot is not the only garbage thing about this game. So before I kill off more brain cells asking questions I don't need to know for this plot, let's talk about some other things. I'll say this right now, this game doesn't know what game it wants to be. As I mentioned in the intro, the game was marketed as a hybrid of a third-person shooter and a character action game, two genres with entirely different fundamentals that do not mesh well when you're forced to switch between them in rapid fashion. It feels like the game wants so badly to just focus on the character action part, but everything else in the game is trying to force it. And I can't help but feel that that's truly to Wanted Dead's detriment. If they focused on one formula over the other, I think it would have resulted in a better experience, but it seems that the developers overestimated their ability to balance the two, and the end result is incredibly flimsy in all regards. Let's start with the melee combat. Hannah uses a sword in conjunction with a handgun to string together attacks in order to do combos on the enemies in her path. When she does enough damage, occasionally an enemy will stagger, with the game doing this slight slowdown thing and the baddie flashes white. This lets you activate finishing moves to quickly dispatch the fodder. She has a standard block and a parry mechanic that allows her to follow up with strong counters that can often set up for the finishers. And occasionally, an enemy might set up for an unblockable move where they flash red, and in this instance you can use your pistol to stun them in order to follow up with more heavy slashes for, you guessed it, the finisher setups. And there's also this little circle thing on the HUD. That's her adrenaline meter, and when it fills up, she can go into bullet time where she just lets off a bunch of uninterrupted shots that can leave enemies stunned to hit with finishers. Problem is, it's kinda ass and doesn't do that half the time because this game is so busted. But if you hadn't guessed already, the entire flow of the melee side is predicated upon aiming to pull off finishers. And this isn't necessarily a bad draw, but I think they focused on it so hard that they forgot to give Hannah any sort of combo game. For starters, her windup when starting a combo is way too slow. I understand having weight to her movements, I usually prefer that kind of thing in my character action, but only her initial swing has this kind of lack of momentum. Well, not true. Her combos are not fast at all, but it all feels like it when compared to that sluggish starter. And again, there's no real combo game here. You get one or two deviations from her standard combo, such as ones where you mix in the handgun for what should be nice extensions, but you'll never want to use them because given that you feel like you have bags of cement tied to your arms as you're trying to get something started, it's strange that there are insanely tight timing windows to use any of the other combos. So I start mashing away because much like Zombie Squad, I can't be bothered to be fancy right now. You do get a skill tree in this game and it's not hard to fill out, but I promise you, I never felt the benefit from half of these skills. Some were more practical, like adding more stim pack capacity or better parry timing, but I swear I never felt as though the upgrades that offered longer combo chains were meaningful. If I had to spend more time wrestling with the snail's pace of the animations, I'd be getting gunned down by the 30 other guys in the back all aiming directly at me and none of my invincible teammates. So that's when you get to the shooty bang gameplay, and as far as its controlling, it's pretty standard functionally. You aim, you shoot, you reload sometimes. That's about as kind as I can be towards it because otherwise almost every gun feels the same except for the shotgun, which is 100% useless. There's no bite when you shoot it and it takes almost all of your shells to kill one guy. I'm actually impressed by how bad it is, but you want to know what's more impressive? This game has the dumbest AI I've seen in a hot minute, and the impressive part is that the combat is so chaotic that it was only about halfway through the game that I genuinely noticed that most of the enemies spend half their time shooting at you in bursts, beelining in one direction, and they don't even really animate turning in other directions. They're just jerking around in every direction, occasionally taking cover because they don't see the point in self-preservation when there's 12 other guys letting out a whole clip at the same time. And then they repeat the process. This loop is genuinely the extent of the AI pathfinding for the majority of the fodder in this game. And if they programmed anything else into these enemies, then they just made that into a new enemy altogether with an unreasonable level of bullet sponginess, like these ninja dudes that already attack way too fast for you to counter effectively without ignoring the literal hail of bullets going on around you. And then they introduce an even harder version in the last couple of levels, and a really huge guy with a minigun. Neat. I totally needed you adding more stress than what I was already being given. And it doesn't get any better, it only gets worse. All the levels in this game are structured in the exact same way. They're all extremely linear, running through a hallway or two before walking into one really big room where cover is just strewn about with no real rhyme or reason. If you get through these sections, then usually you'll be greeted by a drone in the next hallway where you can restock all the items you wasted, ammo, and customize your guns. Since I already made the joke, let's use Yakuza as an example again. You know how in most of these games, there's a section where instead of just one fight, it's a gauntlet where you travel through hallways to continuously beat up a bunch of goons before eventually getting into some kind of boss fight? That's this game's entire setup, but way worse.
Word for word, bar for bar!
Up until the final stage, every one of these checkpoints gives you some kind of attachment for your guns, but I'm gonna be honest, the differences are so negligible I should have saved myself from wasting time in these menus. Actually, I take it back. It wasn't a waste. I needed to pause the game to go take some Advil because I was catching some wicked headaches from how annoying this game is. As I was researching researching it, I saw a review or two trying to paint it as punishingly difficult, and I've never seen such obvious cap in my life. This game is arbitrarily difficult. There is literally no other way to put it. Most enemies take way too long to kill, and when they don't, they fill the room with them and dare you to poke your head out so that they can try to blow it off. The stim pack healing is abysmally low to start and hardly gets any better, even after upgrading it, so they gave Doc the ability to revive you exactly once between checkpoints. But when he does, you probably already used all your heals, plus you sometimes magically end up in the middle of the room, so it's like when you're getting swept in Mortal Kombat 11 and then they hit you with a mercy before they follow up with a fatality. You barely get breathing room, and they expect you to do melee combat in between all this? It literally only takes a few hits for you to get killed, so why did they expect you to put yourself in danger like this? And your teammates are legitimately no help in a fight, except for Cortez, who will sometimes put an enemy in a headlock that will occasionally put an enemy in a finisher stun. Way to go, Cortez. This is why you're the only one I like here. Oh, I almost forgot, they have grenades too. I never use these because when I use them, they're complete garbage. They roll too far when they land, and it seems like they almost always explode late enough for these guys to casually stroll outside of the blast radius. And then I started hating them for another reason altogether. See, in the middle of all this chaos, one of your team just might yell out, "Grenade!" and then you start seeing explosions going off out of nowhere. At this point, I had totally just written it off as the enemy spamming, but then during the escape from the police station, I learned the truth. I happened to be looking at one of my teammates as he called out the grenade, and then he proceeded to throw one, but then I shit you not, he threw it so hard that it bounced off of the ceiling back to us and then went off. It really be your own people, bro. But whether it be the poor checkpoint system, the awfully drawn out gunfights, the absolute guarantee that you will die a ridiculous amount of times and be set back tens of minutes at a time with each fail, and with little to no respite in between unless you count controlling Hannah while listening to her and Vivian singing 99 Left Balloons by Nena. But I survived. Not for lack of the game trying at every turn to make me never want to play it again. And then it had the audacity, the straight up balls to, once the credits rolled, tell me that I unlocked Japanese hard mode. I almost lost my fucking mind. You are not Devil May Cry. Get the fuck out of my face with this. I don't even have a cutaway joke for the next section. I'm almost done, I promise, but there's one last thing I need to highlight. While I have to praise this game for at least running somewhat stably, I have to say that this game is full of terribly poor presentation. Again, when researching, I saw people claiming that the graphics are good in a review here and there, but I have to ask, what exactly are we talking about? The Jello? This game is actually kind of ugly. I mean, yeah, it's colorful and bright, but do me a favor. Look at Hannah's dead eyes and tell me she doesn't look like Sonny from iRobot with a wig on. Look at Richter and tell me he doesn't look like his life's dream was being an extra in Small Soldiers. Look at any of these levels and tell me with a straight face that 90% of everything in it isn't shaped like a square. Be for real right now. Be so for real right now. Please, what are y'all looking at? Everything looks plastic. Nothing animates naturally, and actually, some animations are just straight up unfinished or broken. I just know whoever animated this thought this shit was cold. Too bad sometimes she doesn't even actually kill anybody because she's not actually shooting at anyone, and the game's collision detection was surprisingly good enough to know that. And I swear all these characters gesture through their speech harder than a Puerto Rican. And that's coming from a Puerto Rican. It's so goofy that I almost wasn't paying attention to the voice acting in this. And look, I'll be nice enough to stay away from trashing the acting of the main cast too hard, but I'll honestly only say that it's painfully obvious that most of these actors are not native English speakers. I mean, bless Marie Zimmerman, the actress who was the model and voice actress for Hannah. She seems like a real sweetheart, and if it were me, I'd also be stoked to promote the fact that I got to play the lead in a video game, no matter how many A's they market said game as. But I just can't take this seriously. 110 Industries is a Swiss company, and I believe she is too, so I would have genuinely thought it better to have her dub this game in Swedish, then I'm sure at least on that front she would have got to shine. But I feel like they spent all of the budget on the marketing and cover song licensing, so they had to cheap out somewhere. That would also explain why all of the soldier enemies have one voice. And when we go to the club stage, the suits there sound like they're doing their best impression of Virgil.
Yo, you put up more of a fight? Disappear. You're fucking kidding me. Over here.
Complete with a number of voice lines that I can count on one hand between them all, while constantly talking over each other in the middle of all the chaos. And half of those lines contain the word bitch. Make no mistake, none of the cast is any kind of good, so I don't want to come off as though I'm singling her out. She's just the lead here and naturally stands at the front of everything happening in the game. But I'd still listen to her broken English until the heat death of the universe before I ever want to hear Herzog go on another middle-aged annoying foodie incel tangent while everybody's eating. Like, really, dude? In front of my ramen? Also, I never played a game where I needed to point this out, but this game is supposed to take place in China, right? Where are all the Chinese people? Why is Madam Wong in the minority amongst this cast? I'm not the only one who caught this, right? And lastly, for some reason, they did the super hot fire meme as a loading screen, and I'm sorry, but I don't recall a single intentionally funny thing about this game to warrant this being thrown in. I can only throw this game in my bronze tier because it's the lowest one that I have on my scale. When I picked this up, I honestly was hoping for something that would have at least been a guilty pleasure game. But now I just feel guilty. This was just rough. It straight up feels like something that's dated by PS3 and Xbox 360 standards. I didn't even know they still made them this bad. If you want to subject yourself to this, I'd say wait for a really good sale. I see it go for the $30 to $40 range every once in a while, but I think even 20 is a little steep right now. If you played this game, feel free to give me your horror stories in the comments. Maybe like and subscribe while you're at it. It'll make me feel better, because I know I said I needed a bit of balance, but I think I overcorrected. I need to nap off this self-induced stress and find something else to play so I can even out my levels. Let's pick this up later, okay? Take care.